week, we saw the introduction of the first-person narrative of Ezra. For the first time in chapter 7 of Ezra, we see the personal pronoun I. And so we have, with its use, the introduction of our book's namesake, and that is Ezra. Now that may seem a little bit odd to wait until over 2/3 of the way through a book to introduce oneself, but such is the book of Ezra. So what we're going to do this morning is we're going to think back over the book of Ezra thus far. We're going to get ourselves in context. We're going to pull in a little bit of Haggai, and then we're going to talk about the chapters 7 and 8 of Ezra. So let's put our little review cap on, and if you don't have a review cap, then hopefully you have observation worksheets and an at-a-glance chart. What happens in chapter 1 of Ezra?
They were called to rebuild.
Cyrus issued a decree.
Right, so we have Cyrus, king of
Persia.
issuing a decree to do what? Rebuild the temple. Now, not just in Cyrus's heart, but in the hearts of those who return to rebuild the temple. Who is at work in the hearts of men in this chapter? The Lord is at work in the hearts of men. So he's in at work in his people, and he's also at work in those who would not be considered his people. But we found out that his people, even if they don't think they're his people, are his people, right? Okay, now chapter 2. What happens in chapter 2 of Ezra?
The remnant returns.
Yes, and we have the listing of them, right? So it's laid out there, a bunch of names and what they do and who their family is and all sorts of stuff. Now, what about chapter 3?
They laid the foundation.
And the altar. And the altar.
And the altar. So the altar's first. That's the first thing that they build when they get there. Then they build the foundations or lay the foundations. And there's a celebration at the end of chapter 3. What's the celebration? The festival or feast of booths. And then chapter 4.
They stopped working.
Why?
The enemies.
Intimidated by their enemies.
Yeah, there was a campaign of fear. There was discouragement. They hired people to thwart their plans, and it worked, right? Then chapter 5, what happens?
It began again because Haggai and Zechariah encouraged them.
Right, so by the ministry of Haggai and Zechariah, we see that the work resumes on the temple.
Right.
And what is the message? What is the message from the Lord from the book of Haggai? If you had to break it down and say, what did the Lord have to say in those 2 chapters? What would you say it was?
Do what I tell you.
There's an obedience aspect, right? He gives them some words of encouragement. Remember, this is an encouraging book. What are the words of encouragement? What is the most encouraging thing you could think the Lord would ever tell you?
I'm with you.
I am with you. And that's what he tells his people through the prophet Haggai. I am with you. Not only am I with you, I have been with you, I will be with you, and I will bless you, right? And he tells them to rebuild, get to work, right? He tells them to work. So yes, there is a little bit of that in there too, Jane. What about, so coming back to chapter 6 of Ezra. What happens in chapter 6 of Ezra?
The temple's completed.
They're finished.
And then what do they have? What happens after they complete the
To
temple?
celebrate Passover.
They have a big celebration. That's the dedication of the temple. There's one celebration. There's just a whole lot of celebrating going on. And then what? I'm sorry, Carolyn. Which?
Wasn't it Passover?
Yes, Passover. And then what comes right after Passover?
Tabernacles.
Yes, the Feast of Tabernacle. No.
Unleavened bread.
Unleavened bread. Sorry. I was
I thought
just
that
right
was
there with
Passover.
you.
I forgot.
Passover,
No, it's in between.
Passover and then the unleavened bread. They go right together. You have Passover one night and the next day starts the,
That was all one and the same.
well, it can be. I mean, if you really,
The way it shows
really
it on
think
the
about it.
chart is that the three are together, that they're all considered part of Passover, but there's three distinct parts.
Like the meanings or
Okay.
the meaning of them, I guess, the Passover.
right,
Then
we
they
have,
didn't
yeah.
eat the leaven,
Mhm.
remove the sins.
And those are celebrations anyway. So it says in chapter 6 that they celebrate them with what kind of hearts?
Joy.
With joy. This is a wonderful celebration. This is like a happy, happy time, isn't it? This temple is finally built. So now, as we come in, the temple is rebuilt, the exiles have returned, things are perfect, right?
Not quite.
Okay, so the city is still not completely rebuilt, right? We still have a little bit of a security problem. There's no walls and gates. And then there are still enemies, right? That's one of the things that Ezra has brought out throughout these chapters, that there's these enemies in the land that are working against Judah and Jerusalem, and they will continue to work against them until when? It's a long campaign. Do you remember? It goes all the way through Darius's, all the way through the next king. Who's the next king after
Xerxes.
Xerxes
And then
or Ahasuerus,
Artaxerxes.
and then all the way to Artaxerxes. So this is going on. So things aren't perfect. It's not easy life, right? And not everyone has returned, right? There are still exiles in a foreign land. Okay, and so we pick up the story in Ezra 7, verse 1. Now, after these things, in the reign of Artaxerxes, king of Persia, and so we see that there has been some time that has passed between chapter 6 and chapter 7. Now, your timeline on page 97 may help here, or the timeline that we did a couple of weeks ago may help here. How many years have come and gone? Approximately. For you math majors, it's not like I did this as my math skills are not what they need to be. No, much longer.
516 was finished, 458 Ezra returns.
Right, so that is,
What?
if you're doing the math, it is 57 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so we've gone all the way through the rest of a good long reign of Darius. And then we've had another king that has reigned in between Darius and Artaxerxes, and his name is Xerxes or Ahasuerus. And where can I read more about Ahasuerus?
Book of Esther.
In the book of Esther. So here we are, 57 years later, from the end of end of chapter 7 to the beginning of, the end of chapter 6 to the beginning of Ezra 7. There have been 57 years, and we see a new name, a new character. Well, we can only imagine that there'd be a new character. Why would there be a new character?
Because the leaders that were around are either very old or they died out.
Very good. So we see this new guy, and what's his name? In verse 1.
Artaxerxes.
No, not the king, but the
Ezra.
Ezra. There went up Ezra. So who is Ezra? We looked at this and made a list on days 2 and 3, page 42.
Okay, so really quick, so all of Ezra 1 through 6 is written in hindsight.
Remember we talked about a couple weeks ago, kind of at the end of the lesson, that we talked about that Ezra is a history writer. He's inspired by the Lord. So either he went and did the research, got the accounts of chapters 1 through 6, or the Lord gave him those accounts. But we know they're accurate. But Ezra is not on the scene until chapter 7. Isn't that interesting?
But it says in 97 that there were 3 returns. That's not Ezra returning 3 times.
No, it's not Ezra
It's the
returning 3
people.
times. The first time who led? Do you remember the two leaders
Which
that
is
read them?
Zerubbabel and
Zerubbabel and Jeshua.
Right.
And then the second time we have Ezra. This is the second time. And then there's a third time, and we are going to study that one. But let's go ahead and ruin our joy of discovery. Who's the leader of the next one? Nehemiah. Very good. Okay, so yes, we have the three returns, and this is number 2, led by Ezra. So what did we learn about him on page 42, question 3? You should have done some marking of his name in Ezra chapter 7, and then made that list there on page 42.
He was a priest.
He was a priest,
Son of Sariah.
son of Sariah, son of a whole bunch of other people, son of Aaron, right? So we
He's a
want to.
direct descendant.
He's a direct descendant of Aaron. He is called a what? He's called it 4 times at least in that chapter. He's called a scribe.
Skilled in the law of Moses.
Right, and that goes along with being a scribe. So he's a good scribe. He's not just a scribe, he's a good scribe. He's doing his job, right? What else?
Priest.
He's a priest. He's of the priestly line. The priestly line that is also a scribe.
The hand of God was upon him
Yes. How many times does it tell us that in the chapter?
3 times, I think.
3 times. 6, verses 6,
12.
9,
Oh, no,
9.
9.
and
Sorry.
28, right?
Yep.
Okay, and then what else?
He set his heart to study the law of the Lord and to practice it and to teach it. I love that part.
Isn't that a wonderful verse? Did you just go, I want to be like Ezra this
What
week?
verse was that?
10.
That's verse 10. And that is a great memory verse, too. And because he set his heart to study the law and to practice it, or to be obedient to it, and to teach it in Israel, he had a ministry that was just phenomenal, right? So, what else did you learn? Anything else?
He was given authority over all the treasures.
Yes.
And he was given authority to appoint magistrates and judges and to touch anyone who was ignorant of the laws of God.
To teach. Yeah. You can touch them, but you should teach them too.
18, I liked it because he was trustworthy to do the will of God.
Yes, and I love that he even has the king tell him to use his discretion and God's direction to do that. Isn't that neat? What about verse 25?
He appointed magistrates, judges, to judge all the people beyond the river.
According to what?
The laws of your God.
And it says, he had the wisdom of God in his hand. What is interesting about that is the king is saying, you have the wisdom of God in your hand. He's recognizing that this is a wise man he's standing before. And because he's recognizing that he's a wise man, he's giving him authority that is, I mean, probably unprecedented. I can't imagine that this was a regular occurrence. Now, what about verse 28?
He was strengthened by the hand of the Lord.
He was strengthened by the hand of the Lord, and God did what to him?
Well, he gave him loving kindness.
Yeah, he extended loving kindness to him. And remember, that's a covenant love. That's based on a relationship with the Lord, but it's based on his promises. It's based on an unshakable covenant between him and God. That is exciting, right? That we have that. And we know that he's writing this, so he's the one who's giving God that glory, the saying, he extended that covenant love to me. He doesn't say me yet, but okay. So, what was his calling before the Lord, according to verses 9 and 10?
To go to Jerusalem.
To go to Jerusalem. And why is that his calling? How do we know that's his calling? Or how did he come about finding out about this calling?
Well, God's hand was on him.
Yeah, the good hand of his God was upon him. Verse 10, 4, do you see that? 4, Ezra. That tells us why. Ezra had set his heart to study the law of the Lord and to practice it and to teach the statutes and ordinances in Israel. So you see the will of God meeting with the obedience of Ezra, right? We see that they're coming together and all things are working together for good for those that love God and keep his commandments. I mean, that's what he's basically saying is, I'm seeking the will of God, and God's showing me that his good hand's upon me, and I'm going to go to Jerusalem. This is my calling from the Lord. So he has a calling from before the Lord, but he also has a calling before King Artaxerxes. And he was sent to do a number of things. Now, I made a list on my observation worksheet of the things that he told him to do. It kind of starts him talking to Ezra. In the decree starts in verse 14 and kind of goes down towards verse 26. So somewhere in between verses 14 and 26, you would have located these things he told him to do. What did King Artaxerxes tell Ezra to do?
115, to bring the silver and gold.
Okay, there's one before that in 14.
To inquire concerning Judah and Jerusalem.
Yes, he says, for as much as you, Ezra, are sent by the king and his 7 counselors to inquire concerning Judah and Jerusalem. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2 is, Kayla.
To bring the silver and gold, which the king and his counselors have freely offered.
Yes.
To bring to Jerusalem.
Okay, so there's silver and gold from the king. Then there's also verse 16.
It's all the free will offering of the people.
Yeah, so then there's
also
also a free will offering from the people. And who are the people that he's talking about?
The people of Israel.
The people of Israel. So the people that aren't going, but they're willing to give to the work of the Lord, right? So that's 3 things. Inquire concerning Judah and Jerusalem, bring silver and gold from the king, and the free will offering from Israel. And then what else?
to use diligently and to buy bulls, rams, and lambs with their grain offerings and their drink offerings, and offer them at the altar of the house of your God, which is in Jerusalem.
Okay, so he's told and instructed to perform religious service before this temple. He's supposed to use that money, so he's going to be a guard over this money, right? And then there's also some utensils, right? We get some utensils that need to be brought, so he gets to see those. That's verse 19. Also the utensils which are given to you for the service of the house of God, deliver in full. Again, so we see that instruction there. Deliver in full before the God of Jerusalem. And then what else? Now there's then 21 through 24 is talking about a decree that he gives to the treasurers who are in the provinces beyond the river. So again, that's not instructions to Ezra, but he is to provide for. Ezra is told in verse 20, the rest of the needs for the house of your God, for which you may have occasion to provide for it from the royal treasury. So we have this set of instructions that are to Ezra. And now what motivates Artaxerxes to do this?
God.
so that God will not have wrath against the kingdom, the king's and his son.
Yes. I think that's what's interesting. Surely it is the Lord. That's number one. I mean, it's just so clearly brought out throughout the rest of the book that it is the Lord who stirs up the hearts of men. But in a human motive, according to verse 23, is so that there will not be wrath against the kingdom of the king and his sons. So he wants to keep reigning, right? He wants to stay in power, and he's thinking, if I send this guy and he talks to this powerful God that we've seen work, then maybe I'll get to stay in power, and maybe my sons will get to stay in power. But I also do want to say, because I don't think I put it anywhere in my notes, but I don't know why I didn't, because I just thought it was like so like I made this profound discovery this week that it's not profound. That it says in verse 6 that Ezra, excuse me, let me skip down. It's kind of like towards the end of the verse. And the king granted him, Ezra, all he, Ezra, requested, because the hand of the Lord, his God, was upon him. So I don't know, just that was surprising to me, that this is not just he sought out Ezra and said, this is an honorable man in whom I can place my trust. Let's send him to Judah and Jerusalem and inquire and do all of these things. But it's because Ezra, because he had set his heart to seek the Lord and be obedient to his word, study his word, and to teach it, had then gone before King Artaxerxes in some form. I think there's a clear implication that he has gone before the king to request that he gets to go back to Jerusalem. You may have seen that already and like, yeah, whatever. But I thought that, I don't know, it was a surprise to me. I just thought I'd say, that's another motivating factor. The Lord uses Ezra and his request to stir up the heart of Artaxerxes, and Artaxerxes then sees it as, hey, I can do this and make sure that I don't have any wrath and all that kind of stuff. So there's all kinds of things that are working together in order to cause this return that is led by
And
Ezra.
23 does concur with that too. Whatever is commanded by the God of heaven, let it be done with zeal for the house of the Lord.
Yeah. It's very interesting. I mean, who would say that if they had no idea about this God?
About the power
of
this
and
God.
yeah, and so I was thinking, my movie night in heaven. I hope that we get to see Ezra before King Artaxerxes, before he gets this decree, and we get to see what he says to him. And it probably wasn't all that convincing necessarily, but it's God who is working in these hearts. So we're going to get movie night. I just know it.
I like that.
And what an encouragement for us. It's not our words, it's our lifestyle. Are we set, is our mindset, our heart set, and then people will see that and be moved. So God will use that. It's not up to us or our words or any of that stuff. It's just God will stir the hearts, and that's what happened here.
God's doing the work, and we can trust him to do the work, right?
One of the commentaries I read pointed out how earlier, like in verse 15, he was addressed as the God of Israel. But when you get down to 21, 23, he's talking about the God of heaven.
Oh, interesting.
So he recognizes that this God is not just one amongst
Correct.
a pantheon of gods,
Right.
but he is the God.
Right, but it's interesting too, because I don't know if your commentary would have brought that out, but he has different audiences there. So the audience that he is talking to when he says the God of Israel is Ezra. He's talking to Ezra and addressing Ezra. In 21 and through 24, he is addressing the treasures who are in the provinces beyond the river. So it wouldn't probably be all that, have the force that it would have if it was, make sure
The
you're
same
serving
audience.
this God of Israel, because
Yeah.
they're not interested in serving the God of Israel. But they'd probably be more motivated and more interested in serving the God of heaven, right? Isn't
Good
that
point.
interesting? Okay, so what is Ezra's response to the king's orders? We see his response in verses 27 through 28. Excuse me. Cut out or turn off this one.
What question number are you on?
45:10-ish. I think it's 10.
I'm really just walking through the chapter for the most part, but,
Okay.
so I'm in verses 27 to 28 of chapter 7.
Well, he says, blessed be the Lord, the God of our fathers. He's happy to do this, and he's thankful that he put this in the king's heart.
Right, and who gets the glory?
Recognize that.
God makes it.
Yeah, it's God that gets the glory, and it's not the king, and it's not Ezra who has made this request like, oh, I did it, I went before the king, I had the guts to do it, and I'm so great. No, he knows where it comes from, right? He knows that it is God that has stirred up the hearts of, or has put it into the heart of the king to do this thing. Okay, so now Ezra has a twofold calling. He has one from God, and he has one from the king. Chapter 8 opens with a fun list, because we just needed a fun list in the middle of our study this week. So, who makes this list? Who makes up this list?
Ezra does.
Well, I mean, who's in the list? I'm sorry, that wasn't a good way to ask that question. Who's in the list?
The heads of the father's households who went from Babylon, went to Jerusalem with Ezra.
Okay, did you notice that a lot of these names, and indeed almost all of them, are also listed in chapter 2's list of heads of households?
Oh, interesting.
It's so exciting. So, if you want the proof, I will give you the proof, and you can just write them next to. In verse 3, it correlates that sons of Shechaniah correlates with 2 verse 3. Verse 4, the sons of Pahath Moab corresponds to the sons of Pahath Moab in 2 verse 6. The sons of Zatu correspond to the sons of Zatu in 2:8. The sons of Aden correspond to the sons of Aden in 2:15. The sons of Elam correspond to, that's verse 7, sorry, correspond to 2 verse 7, the sons of Elam. The sons of Shephatiah, I knew there was a way I was going to get to say all these names and mess them all up. In verse 8, correspond to chapter 2, verse 4, the same sons.
This is 2 different groups, though.
It's
of
2
them,
different
right?
groups, but it's the same family.
Oh.
Isn't that fascinating? The sons of Joab in verse 9 correspond to 2 verse 6. The sons of Joab in 2 verse 6. 10, the sons of Bani correspond to chapter 2 verse 10, the sons of Bani. The sons of Bebai in 11 correspond to the sons of Bebai in 2 verse 11. The sons of Azgad in verse 12 correspond to the sons of Asgad in 2 verse 12. The sons of Adonikam in verse 13 correspond to the sons of Adonikam in 2 verse 13. And the sons of Bigvai, love that name. I'm thinking maybe we've got a baby name on our hands. In verse 14.
Boy or girl?
They correspond to the sons of Bigvai in 2:14. Isn't that fascinating? That's almost everybody in the list. The only ones that we have that are excluded are verse 2, sons of Phinehas, the sons of Phinehas, Gershom, and the sons of Ithamar, Daniel, the sons David, Hattush. They are not included the same way, but we do know that there are priests that have, and that's a priestly line, and a kingly line, and we know that we've had priestly line come in with which leader of the first time around?
Joshua.
And we have the kingly line come in with Zerubbabel. So we do have, I mean, they all correspond. I was thinking that it maybe they were more motivated by family who had already returned. So maybe they're looking forward to this, like, hey, they've gone and they've done, and you know, they think, well, let's have a big family reunion back home in Israel, right? So it's very interesting. Okay, that's trivia, and I'm sorry. Sometimes I get so
No, I
excited about
didn't
the trivia.
see that the first time around. I'm glad you pointed it
Well,
out.
and I kind of wondered if they corresponded, and I was like, okay, I'm going to look, and oh, they corresponded.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot more people that come back, but this is the list of the people that come back. Now, the group that comes back the first time around with Zerubbabel and Jeshua is a much larger group. It's like around 50,000 people, and this is, I wrote it down somewhere, because I had to have somebody else do the math for me. Maybe it's in my notes. No, it's not. This is 1,700 people versus 50,000 people.
Wow.
So this is a tiny group. It's very interesting though, because they are tasked with a lot of stuff to bring back. So it's pretty neat. Okay, so we have the list, and so our journey has a decree. It has a destination. It has a leader. It has some items to take with them, and now it has sojourners. How does the journey go? Ezra gets started on the journey on what day? And according to
New Year's
7
Day, first day of the first month.
Yeah, New Year's Day. It's a good time to start a journey. That's according to chapter 7, verse 9, in case you're, wanted to know exactly where that is. And he gets as far as the river that runs to Ahava when he realizes that there is something missing. What is missing?
There's no Levites.
Yeah.
I wonder
No.
why.
I don't know. It's very interesting.
But Ezra's a Levite though, right?
No, he's a scribe.
But he's from.
I thought they had to be from the tribe of Levi.
No, Levites and priests are not the same thing.
But he's a son
No,
of
but the
Aaron,
priests are a
though.
part of,
Right, but the Levites are separate.
The Aaron line is the priests.
The Aaronic
and
line,
he's
yes.
part
Yeah,
of
so,
Levi.
yeah, it's like a big group. So
and they
I
are
mean,
part of the Levi family.
Was
He's a
Aaron
priest
of
of
the
the
tribe of Levi?
I don't
Yeah.
think so. That's what that's a
I'm with
separate
you, Joe.
tribe.
I think so.
Yeah, because it
I
thought.
think so.
I think it's a separate tribe, pretty sure, based on our cross references, which we're gonna get to in just a second. So we're gonna let's figure it out. Let's sort it out, ladies. Okay, because Levi comes before Aaron, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So okay, in our timeline, he's before Aaron. So it's a possibility. What we're trying to discover is whether Aaron is a Levite, or if he's not. And I don't think he is, based on our study. Okay, which we could really go and find out, but I don't know exactly where. Okay, so why do we need Levites? We looked at the Levites on day 5, page 47. Question 4. And we looked up some passages that we learn about the priests and the Levites. What does Numbers 3 tell us the tribe of Levi is to do?
Assist. They're to be brought near and set up to serve the priests,
Yes.
servants in the tabernacle.
And the congregation.
So they're supposed to perform duties for Aaron the high priest and the whole congregation. They're to be servants of the tabernacle, or what will become the temple. They are also to keep the furnishings. What would be the furnishings?
The utensils that were brought back.
Yeah, the utensils. Now, in this day, though, it would be the Ark of the Covenant. It would be all of the utensils and the laver and all the accoutrement that go with, and they're moving, remember, they're moving this along as this is happening. And what about the Numbers 8 passage? This is why I think this is a separate tribe from Aaron. It's not? Oh, really? Okay. I'm surprised.
You are to set the Levites apart from the other Israelites, and the Levites will be mine.
Okay, so the Lord calls them his. He just pulls them right aside and says, I'm going to use you all. And why is that? It's it's in place of something.
In place of the offering.
Of the firstborn of every womb, right? So the Lord has already set aside with all the cattle and all the sheep and all the first fruit. He set aside the first fruits for himself. Yes, Carolyn.
I found the answer to our question.
Okay.
In Exodus chapter 2, it says, a man from the house of Levi went and married a daughter of Levi, and the woman conceived and bore a son, and when she saw he was beautiful, she hid him for 3 months. That's
Okay,
Moses.
so he is a Levite.
So he is a Levite.
Okay, so we have, in the category of Levites, we have Aaron. But Aaron is set aside, and his line is set aside to the high priest and priests. And then the Levites are set aside for the service of the temple. Thank you for that, because I didn't do my due diligence.
I never questioned that before.
I didn't do my due diligence. Okay, so the Lord calls them mine, and instead of taking the first fruits of the womb of every woman, of every woman that is born of the first fruits, he says, instead of doing that, I'm going to take this tribe, and this tribe's going to be mine. Right? Okay, and they're going to serve Aaron, and they're going to serve the house of the Lord. So why do we need Levites on this trip?
Well, they're taking things into the temple, for worshiping God, so they better have their leaders.
Doesn't that keep it clean?
Right,
yeah,
right.
like they don't want to
Yeah,
touch them.
they're the ones in charge. They're the ones that are supposed to be in charge of all of the things that are going to enter the temple.
Right.
And so they have rituals for purification. They have all of those kinds of things to keep themselves pure so that they can enter in. And we'll talk a little bit more about the holiness here in just a few minutes. Okay. So how does he solve the problem of the missing Levites, according to verses 15 through 20?
He sent them to Edo, the leading man, at a place at Cassiphia,
You can say it however you want to. Just say it bold.
and said, bring ministers to us from the house of our God. Where's Cassiphia? Is that in Babylon?
It is actually not locatable anymore. It's a lost city, so to speak, as is the river that runs to Ahava. So we can't locate that on the map. But although we would know that it's somewhere between Babylon and Israel, right? So it's somewhere along the road, whatever. And they also said that river that runs to Ahava might be considered a canal as opposed to an actual river. And that might be why we don't necessarily know exactly where it is, because the rivers usually stay and the canals may be, broken down and that kind of thing. Okay, so he sends this group of people. What group of people does he send to Edom, according to verse 16?
Leading men and teachers.
Yeah, so we've got leading men and teachers. And we need the both of them to go to this Edo, who is a leading man of the place of Cassiphia, and tell them, he told them what to say to Edo and his brothers. Who is Edo? What is he?
He's
One
the
of the
father of Zechariah the prophet. I found that somewhere. I'm trying to find it in somewhere that we read that. I found Edo
Is it the
once
same
before.
Edo?
Oh, that's
I
interesting.
wonder if it is the same Edo. I think we talked about that previously, that they weren't necessarily, the
It's
Zechariah that
different.
was mentioned in 2
Is it?
is not the same Zechariah that's
Oh.
mentioned. But I don't know, I mean, that, you could have found a little piece of trivia. We'll have to do some research. Okay, so they are temple servants, right? Because it says there, Edo and his brothers, comma, the temple servants at the place of Casiphia. So they're leading men who are also temple servants. And he's asking Edo and his brothers to do what?
To bring
Bring
ministers
ministers to us.
the house
For the
of
house
God.
of God. And so what happens?
He does.
He does. According to,
The good hand of our God upon us.
okay, remember, this is not based on the persuasiveness of these men. This is not based on Ezra has some amazing influence and you just listen, everything Ezra says you do. It's the good hand. Ezra's giving credit again to the Lord. It's the good hand of our God upon us. They brought us who?
A man of insight.
Man of insight of the sons of Mali, the son of,
Levi.
so this guy fills the requirement of having a Levi, the son of Israel, namely Sherebiah, and his sons and brothers, 18 men, so we have 19 men, and Hashabiah and Jeshiah, the sons of Merari, with his brothers and their sons, 20 men. So how many are we up to now?
39.
39. And 220 of the,
Temple servants.
and whom David and the princess had given for the service of the Levites, all of them were designated by name. So we kind of have this hierarchy here, right? So we talked about, now that we've got it clear, we've got Aaron at the top, or Aaron, the royal, the high priest. They are being served by the Levites. Then we have these Levites that are being served by the temple servants. And the temple servants were appointed originally, according to this, by David, right?
Were they Levites too? Or were they just servants?
I think they might be just servants. It's kind of hard because there's
It
times
doesn't
where
really say.
there's times where it says, it kind of links the two. And I think it must be because they're all providing service in the temple. Now, they probably would have known where the barriers broke down as far as the rules and regulations of who's going to get to do what in the temple. But you often find the Levites mentioned very closely to the temple servants. But that could be just because they're all serving in the temple. We'd have to really go back and do some studying. Okay.
I would be surprised that anyone would be allowed to serve in the temple if they weren't a Levite. That's just
Right.
opinion.
Right, yeah, that they have to be holy, right?
Yeah.
There's
Oh my God.
definitely. Okay, so he solves the problem. We've got Levites, right? Before they get going with the addition of the Levites, what happens in verses 21 through 23?
I love this.
He called a fast.
Well, no, now see, that's the difference between you and me, because her first thought is fast and pray. But my first thought was, I love the fact that he goes, whoa, I'm a little afraid here, but I'm too ashamed to ask for la la la. So I will fast and pray. But the idea is, from my perspective, he was afraid.
There is something daunting
Yes.
about this journey,
Yes.
isn't there? And yet, Ezra has been a man of faith
Yeah.
before the king.
But it wasn't
And-
easy, and I
right,
think
right,
this is
totally
showing
not
us
easy.
it was not easy for him, which
Oh, no.
relieves my heart.
Oh, yeah.
That it doesn't just, that having faith isn't necessarily an easy thing that just plops on your head. It's more a reaction to what you have to do because you do believe in God, even though your feelings may be something else.
Fear, yeah,
Right.
there's
Yeah.
definitely
It's
a matter of fear.
response.
And also, we aren't going to make any categorical decisions based on who has greater faith, because as we find out when we get into Nehemiah, not to ruin your joy of discovery, but Nehemiah gets an army to go with him.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can either go with the army or you can not go with the army, but what you can't do is say, I trust in the Lord, and then go, "Oh, you know what?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
nice to have a little of that."
Exactly.
You can't do both,
Yeah.
right? And he realizes that you can't do both.
Well, and he
so he
knows
goes
the
to the
value of the treasure they've got.
Oh, I know. I mean, yeah,
Oh
we're
my
going to get to
goodness.
how big this is. 'Cause
Yeah.
this is like massive.
Yeah.
And we're talking about a small group of people. I mean, if you divided it up and each one of them had to carry a certain amount of it, oh my goodness. I mean, you would feel the weight of, this is a dangerous task. This is a lot of stuff. Like a lot of stuff that they have to take with them.
You know, I do want to make a comment about that, because when we are fearful, isn't always evidence of a lack of faith. And I think what I see, it's not.
It's
right.
not, because he's directing in the right place.
Correct. And so I think what speaks clearly about his humility, and I think that's where the difference is. If we boast in something that the Lord can do, that fast was a sign of his humility to trust in the Lord. Because of what he had said. Let's see. So we got.
I mean, and he says it there in verse 21, that we might humble ourselves before our God to seek from him a safe journey for us, our little ones, and all our possessions. For I was ashamed to request from the king troops and horsemen to protect us from the enemy on the way, because we had said to the king, a great statement of faith, the hand of our God is favorably disposed to all who seek him. That's a statement of faith.
Yes, absolutely.
Just straight up. But when the fear sets in, when the emotion, when the reality of the task that is before them, not only do we realize we have to do it the right way, we have to have our Levites, but we also have to humble ourselves before the Lord, knowing we're not going to make it unless it's by his good hand.
Right. And then oftentimes in scripture, when we see, for I was ashamed, we take that and how we would say that, I'm ashamed. And that's not what it usually means. It means I don't want to shame the Lord.
Right.
And there's a big difference there. When I say I'm ashamed to make this request, it's again about me. I don't want my actions to bring shame on the God that can do this.
Right. It's all about his glory. And we keep on coming back to that he is constantly going to be bringing the glory back to God. He's seeking him for the journey. He's stopping everything, proclaiming a fast, and what goes along with the fast? Prayer. So we're going to pray, we're going to seek our God concerning this matter, and then he says at the end of verse 23, and he, God, listened to our entreaty. And so he can step forward in faith, right? I mean, it's not the fast that does it. It's not the prayers that do it. It's the faith and him just, I'm going to walk before the Lord. It's a humility before the Lord.
This may seem like a tangent, but I had a question. In verse 21, where it says we're seeking from the Lord a safe journey, for us, our little ones and our possessions. If they've got little ones with them, that implies that there's women with them as well.
So we only have that amount of men. Yeah, it would be. Now, I'm just saying that the amount that we are told is right around 1,700, almost 1,800. But we know from that verse that there are more people there. And there's probably donkeys, and there's probably cattle, and just like with Zerubbabel's journey. Now, different things are brought out in the two journeys. The thing that is brought out in this journey, which is not necessarily brought out in Zerubbabel's journey, is this faith-based journey. This is gone forth under the good hand of the Lord. And Ezra, he can know for sure and testify to that. Now, he can have read back and discovered what happened on Zerubbabel's journey, but he is saying, I'm going to bring the glory to God for this journey because I was on it and I know what he brought us through, and this is how we did it. And so I just wanted to say that kind of what I was saying there, that fasting and prayer are not like, remember we talked about this when we talked about the Sermon on the Mount. It's not the coin in the slot that I put the coin in the slot and I get back something. Mm-hmm. It's not that. It's about humbling oneself before the Lord and seeking Him and His provision and His providence before a journey. So it's not about everybody needs to now go home and fast for the next week in order to, find out whatever, right? In order to get what you want. And it's not about, the amount of prayers that you pray, but it is being humble before the Lord and saying, my life is in your hands, Lord. I'm ready to go on this journey, and I'm trusting you, right? Okay. So
And it was 57 years later.
I know.
So
I know.
that has a lot to do with it as well.
Yeah, there's been some time passed, right? Okay. So
And we talked too, and I always get my studies mixed up. We talked too about the actual fear of the journey. I don't know, maybe that's my morning study. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
no, it's okay. Did you want to go on or
No, I better not.
Okay.
That may be my Sunday morning study.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Are they ready to go now? They've got the Levites. They've done the fasting and prayer. Are you ready to go?
No, they have to weigh out and divide up all the utensils so that everybody is responsible for a small part.
Right. Well, a group of them are, and they're going to be the Levites, right?
Right.
So there's what I called it was a transfer of wealth to the Levites. This happens in verses 24 through 30. So the transfer is, and remember we talked about what the Levites are there for. The transfer is putting these things into the hands of the rightful caretakers for the journey. They are appointed by God from long ago to take care of the things that will go in the temple. And these are the things that are going to go in the temple, so it makes sense that they're the ones who take care of it on the journey, right? Because they're going to go in the temple. So what instructions go along with this transfer of wealth in verses 28 through 29? What does Ezra tell them?
They're holy.
Oh, isn't that wonderful?
And the utensils
Are holy as well. Yeah.
And the silver and the gold are a freewill offering to the Lord God of your fathers. What does he tell them?
Watch and keep them until you lay them before the leading priests and the Levites of the heads of the fathers' household of Israel and Jerusalem in the chambers of the house of the Lord.
Okay, so he tells them how long they're going to have them, right? He tells them, you are holy, and the utensils are holy. So it kind of sets the stage for how they're to be treated, right? This is important. And do you remember Ezra's role that he has set his heart to do? What does it tell us in to study, obey, and teach? What's he doing here?
Teaching.
He's teaching. This is part of his teaching ministry. And one of the major parts of teaching, which Jane could speak of and Carolyn could speak of, is review, right? Let's review, Levites. This is, you are holy. You have always been holy, and these utensils are holy. And this is the people's offering to the Lord. Know that going in, therefore watch and keep them until you weigh them out before the leading priests and the Levites. So it is passing the torch in a major way. This is a large amount of stuff that's going back. So, now, I think this is really interesting. Only one verse is dedicated to an almost 4-month long journey. What does this verse tell us about that journey? Verse 31.
The hand of God was over them as they traveled, and he delivered them.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like just a matter of fact, like we left, we got there, the hand of the Lord was on us. That's enough said, right? Except for, what does God do while they're on the journey? We don't hear all these stories, right? But we know that he does what?
He delivers them from the hand of the enemy.
And
Well,
the
stand
end-
And the
over there.
ambushes along the way.
Yeah.
So, did
Anticlimactic.
they, I know, but that means that they met with, I'm sorry?
I said, do you know what an ambush is? There can be there can be people behind the.
Right,
Yeah,
just trying to.
right.
So was this an easy journey?
No.
No, but does Ezra make it sound pretty easy by only giving one verse to it and saying the good hand of the Lord? Well, you know what's interesting is sometimes we look back on things in life, and sometimes we go, man, that was hard. But sometimes we think like it's bigger while we're in it, and then we look back on it and we're like, God had me the whole time, you know, and that kind of thing. And that's kind of what Ezra is saying. I mean, he's been saying that from the beginning of the journey. But I mean, whatever he went through, he knew coming out of it that the good hand of the Lord was upon him for this journey. And so, yeah, there were ambushes and ambushes, not one ambush, but ambushes, and that there were enemies about, and yet he only dedicates this. We left, we got there, it was great, right? It's just such a neat testimony to God's work, right, in this journey. Now, like I was just saying, who is prominent in the journey? Is it Ezra?
No.
The Lord.
No, it's the Lord. And again, we talk about that. We've been talking about that over and over and over. This is not a story about Ezra, is it? It's a story about God. And we started talking about it all the way back in week 1 when we came in and we had our discussion. What did you learn about the Lord in those first few chapters? And we are continuing to learn things about the Lord because it is Ezra's writing of this, and it is Ezra's goal to teach people about the Lord, right? And so it's so neat that he's accomplishing it thousands of years later. He's still teaching us things about the Lord because he set his heart to study the Word, to be obedient to it, and to teach others. Then the Lord used him to write down this account. And he didn't say, well, let me just tell you all about myself, did he? He said, I'm going to tell you the story about the Lord and what he did for the people of Israel. It's just such a beautiful, beautiful picture of his devotion to the Lord. Okay, so what happens when they get to Jerusalem?
They stay there for 3 days.
They they rest,
They
basically.
rest for, yeah. for
And then
3
what
days.
else? There's a bunch of things that happen.
Yeah, on the 4th day, the children go and utensils were weighed out in the house of our God into the hand of Miriam-mouth of the son of Uriah and the priest, and with him was Ezra. The son.
Yeah, we don't have to read all the names.
Okay, they weighed out all the stuff.
Yes, okay, so we have and
Yeah.
I was trying to come up with the right word for this. If this is the wrong word, remitting, is that the right word?
There is one.
Remitting the treasures into the storehouses of the, is that the right?
Putting them back in.
Yeah, that's it, right? I don't know. Okay, so we have rest, we have remitting, I was trying to do ours.
I would say
We
they
have
were
rest.
doing an inventory of it.
Yeah, they were.
You know, it's kind of like a bill of lading.
Yes, yes.
When if you're the transporting company, you have this list of everything, you sign off for it. That happened earlier when it was all weighed out. And now they're delivering it, so it's like a bill of lading. They're inventorying it and setting it all up.
Yes, yes. Okay, now let's go back to chapter 7 really quick and talk about what it was that they brought.
Lots of stuff.
Oh my goodness, it's so much stuff. And you ladies know I am no math major, so I wrote down some stuff. So verse 22, oh wait, no, that's not right. I'm in the wrong verse. Where is it that it says that?
What chapter are you
I'm looking at the wrong.
Seven,
Is
or
it chapter?
17 or 16?
Hold on. I know it mentions how much stuff they're bringing with it.
826, I weighed into their hands 650
Oh, well, there it is. It's in the same
pounds of
chapter.
silver.
Okay.
Yes.
Thus, thank you very much, Carolyn. I was going back to a different one. Thus I weighed into their hands 650 talents of silver, and silver utensils worth 100 talents, and 100 gold talents. Now, 100 talents is equivalent in our measurements to 3¼ tons.
Wow.
Tons.
How did you carry that?
That's what
I
I'm
know. I mean, are you getting a
There's only
picture of
40
how
men.
big this was?
I mean, really?
No, this is outrageous. Okay, so
Say that again.
I had to write it down myself. 100 talents is equal to 3¼ tons.
That's a whole lot of weight to pull.
Okay, that's 100 talents of silver utensils and 100 gold talents, right? But did you see? It's also 650 talents of silver.
Wow.
So we have add on to that another
That took a
15
lot of camels.
plus
No
tons.
kidding, yeah.
And how many men did we say we brought?
Camels weigh not a lot. 220 temple servants, would they be part of
And
that?
They would be part of that.
39.
Yeah.
Plus
I
39.
mean, so
That's a lot.
this is a task that they have undertaken, isn't it?
Oh,
Well, yeah, my
And-
goodness.
And okay, let's bring it all together. This is a huge task, but let's bring it all together. What does Ezra say about this journey? The good hand of the Lord was upon us,
Right.
and he delivered us from the hand of the enemy and ambushes along the way. Now,
With
that
all
just seemed like that
stuff.
was just must have been so simple. But we're talking about a massive amount of stuff. So I just want you to get an idea of when Ezra says, the hand of the Lord was upon us.
That was a big deal.
No kidding.
That was a big deal, but it's also like the understatement of the century. I mean, it's just, it's huge how much the hand of the Lord was upon them.
Okay, now I'm just Googling this because I thought a talent wasn't a weight of measurement, but a weight of value.
Well, this is from my commentary, and
Okay.
it tells us, because it's 100 talents is 3¼ tons, 100 cores, which is from that previous that I was going back to.
Correct.
100 cores is 600 bushels, and 100 baths is 600 gallons.
Right.
So
But when we talk about talents, it's a value, not a weight.
I think, are you talking about in the New Testament?
Well, and because that's what I was thinking, so
Yeah.
as I'm Googling it here, it talks about it is a measurement, a large monetary measurement.
Right.
That,
Well, but it'd be monetary because we're talking about silver.
yes, but you're talking about it in tons is weight,
Right,
not value.
but that's what it would have been, because they weighed out, that's how they
That
measured.
was their value,
They-
was the weight.
Yeah, it's a, okay.
Yeah.
It's like a coin that is a talent,
Correct.
weighs a specific amount. Well, 1 talent would be,
Yeah, I'm tracking with you.
right, I
yeah.
know, and again, I'm not a math
Yeah.
person, so don't blow my mind by
Oh,
just
and I don't
throwing it
know.
out there. But what I'm saying is, so if you piled up 100 of them and put them on a scale, and you put it next to, on the other side
Yeah.
of the scale,
That's
it
over
would weigh out.
6,000 pounds.
Okay, I did some math, and 100 talents, and I could be completely wrong, but 100 talents would be divided up between 260, among 260 people, would be 24 pounds. Then you have, that was just for the 100 talents. Now we've got 650 talents of silver, so multiply that by 6, and then 100 gold talents. These guys are carrying a lot.
This is a big deal. Yeah, I mean, either way, I mean, even if it's like, even if we're wrong by like a lot, okay? Like, say I'm way off. we're still talking about
Oh, yes,
It's
definitely.
massive.
a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
And here we're
Many
talking about
tons of
tons of stuff,
Yeah,
right?
Tons of stuff.
And so again, I'm bringing that out to bring the point home that the protection of this is only by God's hand,
Right.
right?
That's right.
So it's a
I
daunting
mean,
responsibility,
yeah, it's
without
not
a doubt.
it's not even a question that when Ezra says the good hand of the Lord is upon us,
Right.
he means
Yeah.
we wouldn't have even begun to make it without God, right? I mean, this is massive. And so
Definitely,
again,
yeah.
this brings forth the faith of Ezra in a very faithful and trustworthy God, right? He's a big God.
Did you, like on verse 27, there's 20 gold bowls worth 1,000 derricks?
Derek's, yeah.
So, and that means that's, isn't a derrick amount of money?
Yes, and I didn't write that one down, so.
So, but that, then we go back to 26, and you've got 650 talents. Well, a talent would be like a derrick, it's worth
Right, it would be a
so
different,
much.
yeah, it'd be a different
Like-
measurement, right,
Um,
yeah. There's a worth there, and
Right.
I don't have the worth, I didn't write down how much the 20 gold bowls would be because they're worth
Right.
1,000 derricks.
So we're talking to, not only, how much, like, how much the whole thing is worth.
Oh, I can't even imagine, I mean, we're talking millions and millions
But
of
I think
dollars.
a talent is the same like as a derrick.
Oh, I don't think it's the same. I
Not
think
the same
that-
amount,
Right,
but
but it would,
it is a
it's a
measure of-
unit of measurement for the,
Measurement of money.
Yeah, and I didn't write that one down. I have the baths and the cores and the talents, but I don't have the derricks, but we can look that up. But then we also have, in addition to that, 2 utensils of fine, shiny bronze, precious as gold. So this is like the nicest bronze you've probably ever, put your hands on. So again, all that to say and bring about the understanding that this is the Lord's journey. This is who has brought these people from, all the way from Babylon. And also, I mean, it's been a pretty quick journey, right? They leave basically by the time that they get
4
ready
months.
and everything, they leave basically the middle of the month. So it's about 3.5 months of this journey. They're just hoofing it with all this tons of stuff coming along with them. And it's pretty impressive. I'm impressed. Are you? Okay, so we have after they get to Jerusalem, they rest, they do the bill of lading into the temple, and there's a record that is kept of it, right? That it's recorded. And then what else do they have to do? Verses 35 and 36.
Burnt offerings, they offered burnt offerings.
What kind? What kind of them? No, what are they?
There are
What is it?
A sin offering.
Bowls.
They are
Lambs.
sin
Sin
offerings.
offerings.
Yeah,
Right.
sin offering.
And they're all offered as a burnt offering to the Lord, right? So we have worship here.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what it was like for these people who have never seen, many of them probably never seen the temple? Ezra was probably born, I mean, I can't imagine he'd not be, he probably born in Babylon, having never seen what was his destiny, right? To be a servant of this temple. That's what he was born to do. And these other men who were also born to serve in the temple, they finally get there and they finally get to offer in the temple. This is huge. This is so exciting. And again, Ezra's just so nonchalant, just we did this and then we did this and then we did this.
I don't think he was
I
nonchalant.
don't think, but at the same time, I get to the point of there's a humility in him that is so great.
And a
that it's almost-
dependence.
Yes, but it's
I mean-
almost like, I just want to jump up and down and talk about how great the Lord is, and he's like, yeah, this happened. I don't know, like it's just,
He
It's
makes it
almost
look
not,
easy.
yeah, he makes it look easy because he's trusting in
He has great faith.
God.
He has
Yes.
great faith.
Yeah, and you want to be around people like that, because I need to jump up and down, and apparently my faith is not that great.
I'm sorry, I missed the timing of it, because it started in the first month and it says they arrived the first month.
No,
No.
it was about 4 months, they arrived the 5th month.
What
Yeah,
verse?
we journeyed from the river of Hava
7-9.
on the 12th of the first month to go to Jerusalem. The hand of God was over us. Thus we came to Jerusalem and remained there 3 days. It doesn't say when they get there,
It says
but
5
it says,
months in 7-9.
yeah,
First month to go from
that's
Babylon.
where you get the timing.
First of the 5th month came to
The
Jerusalem,
first
so
of
this
the
is
5th
5 months.
Oh, you can't, okay.
Well, 4.
But then
That'd be 4 full
That's
months.
what I have, 4
Yeah,
months.
4
Yeah.
full months. I mean, it doesn't.
well, no, it doesn't, but I
They
just.
left on the
like, how did they
first
get
month, and they arrived on the first of the first month, and then they arrived on the first of the 5th month.
there? But then, on verse 31, it says, then we journeyed from the river Ahava on the 12th of the first month to go to Jerusalem.
31,
Right, so-
you're
The
so-
first 12 days of their journey was getting to the river of
There
Ahava.
you go.
Okay.
So they leave on the first. That's set in stone.
Okay.
They leave on the first of the first month.
Okay.
By the time they get to Ahava, that's when, or
that's the 12th of the
it's
first
the
month.
12th of
Okay.
the first. Well, by the time they leave from Ahava, so they get to Ahava, and that's when we discover
They're
there's
right.
something missing, and we have some things we need to get done before
Okay.
we go.
Okay.
So by the time
And then they
they
remain
get
there
ready
3
to get
days.
all those things together and get back on the road, it's the 12th of the month. And they journey until the first of the 5th month.
Do we know how long a typical journey would take? Is this a short time, a longer time, an average time?
I think
we
it's
know?
a shorter amount of time, and I'm not quite sure. I saw it in my commentary, but I didn't write it down, and I don't want to
I got
quote
the
to you.
impression that it was a shorter than normal.
I
period
think,
of time.
and considering the considerable amount of stuff
Oh,
that's
yeah.
coming with it, I mean, yeah, I think it's a pretty, again, evidence of God's good hand.
If they had this much stuff on this trip, what went on the first trip?
Mostly
A lot of
people,
stuff.
right?
It's
And
approximately
a lot more people.
500 miles,
Oh.
my commentary said,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's a considerable journey, but
That is
also,
moving pretty darn fast.
yeah, and
Still.
see, the first thing around
With the
that,
volume
way
of
more
stuff.
Stuff from nearby.
So, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
okay, and
Just
then,
curious.
and then what's the last thing they have to do?
Delivered the king's edicts to the king's satraps and governors
In the provinces beyond the
beyond the
river.
river.
And what did they do?
Supported the people in the house of God.
Yeah, and we know that that was gonna happen before, right? And it's continuing here. Okay, so, from your study this week, what is your impression of Ezra? A man of
He really
faith.
was a man of
Yes, he
faith.
was.
Yeah. A man of humility.
Single-minded. Was really single-minded. to
He had
serve
one
the
focus,
Lord,
right?
Yeah.
Audience of one.
Yeah, yeah, he set his heart. And do you think that that was like a one-time thing, or do you think that he needed to do that on a regular basis?
Oh, I think
Yeah,
it was
life-
ongoing. It was
lifetime.
continuous.
It was
a-
ongoing, yeah.
Going, yeah, definitely.
Because the Bible doesn't read itself, does it? Right? I mean, I could set my heart, like a lot of times we do, maybe your mention of New Year's Day and this journey, I could set my heart to study and read the Bible every day next year, right? Read it every day, this is gonna be. And then life gets in the way, right?
Oh, yeah.
And yet Ezra didn't let life get in the way. He set his heart to continually study the law, to be obedient to it, and to teach others. What did you learn about his relationship to God that could inform your relationship to God? And that might be, you may want to answer that, you may not want to, but that's the application type. Kayla, did you want to say something?
Well, I mean, I just think it is his dependence upon the Lord. And I don't think this was a one-time occurrence.
No.
I think it was built over a lifetime which is encouraging for us to make the decision. And I'm sure life got in the way of Ezra.
Oh, right.
And so he just picked up whatever that gap of time was, just like we can do. You know, the Lord says, all you have to do is turn and call to me and you'll find me. So same thing. So I think it's a great encouragement to us. God has his hand upon his children, all of us. He has a purpose before the foundations of the world for all of us. We just need to be simply faithful and dependent.
Yeah, there's not something special about Ezra.
Right.
It's about the God whom he serves that makes it special. And it's the same thing with us. It's recognizing there's no good thing in me apart from him. And therefore, I'm going to live my life as pleasing to him as I can possibly do. I'm going to dedicate myself to study his word, to be obedient to him, and for those that are called to teach. Now, that doesn't mean that all of us are called to teach, right?
No, but we are all teachers.
But we are all teachers, right? And so, like I was saying, part of the testimony of Ezra these thousands of years later is him being a teacher still today to us, which is to learn more about the Lord. And I would hope that if the Lord tarries, which I really hope he doesn't, but can you imagine 2,000 years from now, the testimony that we would be able to give, not that our testimony would be scripture like Ezra says, but that we would hopefully pass down to the next generations a legacy of teaching the word and showing them and getting them excited about it. I mean, he obviously had great parents who set aside the time to direct his heart towards the Lord, right?
To nurture that.
So that teaches me about being a parent too. Okay, next week we are going to finish.
Or maybe he didn't.
Or maybe he didn't. Maybe.
I mean, really,
maybe
the
it's just
truth
from the Lord.
is, so because we don't want to get stuck with, well, there you go, another thing, I blew it as a mom, you know, or, well, my parents didn't do that. We don't know.
Right.
God's hand was upon him.
Right.
And he took the seriousness
It's just an
of that.
amazing testimony.
And all of that, the reason that one verse particularly speaks to me in that it gives me what I think is like a window into the realness of who he was. That he was a real person who probably gasped, at what am I doing? In my mind, that's the way I'm reading that scripture, but I am trusting God and I'm going to do this because I'm trusting him.
Right.
But it was, so often reading scripture when I was younger, I thought, well, of course, those people are going to do it right. They're in the Bible. That's before I go and start studying. But there is that feeling that they didn't have the same feelings or the same fears or the same anxieties that
they're
we
men
do.
just like
And that one little phrase, like I said, it grabs my heart in that he was a real person and he probably was afraid, but he didn't let it stop him. His faith. So I can be a faithful person even if I'm fighting anxieties. No, give them to God. And I know all the verses about not being anxious. I know all of that. But I'm just saying my body doesn't know all of that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not about the feelings.
No.
It's about what you
It's
do
about
when the feelings
choosing
come.
to believe God.
Yeah,
is
choosing to trust him,
Yeah.
choosing that he is greater than whatever I'm feeling,
Exactly.
whatever even lies before me. Because again, as we brought home when we looked at the amount of stuff, it is a daunting journey. This is not like some cakewalk, and he doesn't get a cake at the end of it, I don't think. I don't remember reading that verse. But it's not just some easy journey back home. This is huge. And he is taking all that huge and saying, I trust you.
Yeah.
And that's the lesson for us, is we take all our huge, all of our day, all that lays before us today.
Well, and sometimes I feel like I'm carrying 3 3/4 tons.
Right? Yeah. I mean, there's a way
Exactly.
that,
39 people.
yeah.
But we
Yeah.
are called to walk by faith. And
Yeah, we
that's
take all-
exactly what Ezra did. And yet we, as Jane said, we get the glimpse into how he was an ordinary person.
Yes.
He was fearful, taking not just the treasure, but the little ones.
Yeah.
And the little
Yeah.
ones doesn't mean necessarily babies, although there were some there,
Right.
but it was those
Right.
with
Yeah.
little faith too,
Ah,
that he had to be the leader.
Yeah, and you do see that too. We haven't really brought that out, but I mean, I thought about how much of a leader this man had to be.
Yeah.
Because you have a small group doing a great task, and he is directing their hearts towards
Correct.
towards the Lord.
Mhm.
Because that's really all that matters, and that's the whole idea. He is a teacher's teacher, right? He is doing what he said. I just love it. He does this, he sets his heart to do it, and then you see him do it, and then he doesn't even say, and because I set my heart to do it, I did it, right? Because
The mark of a true
we have that
leader
tendency.
is the humility.
Yes.
And,
yes.
and then he says, but it's not me. It's all the Lord. And so he's a great testimony
Yes.
for us these thousands of years later. So, okay, so next week we finish Ezra, then we'll have a little break, and then we'll go and we will study Nehemiah. And we'll get the rest of the story.
On the week that we're taking a break,
Yes.
those of us who can and choose to are gonna do lunch at 11:30 at
Rubio's.
Rubio's.
Okay.
I like Rubio.
So mark that
Did
on
you
your
say
busy
11:30?
social calendar.
Yes.
Okay.
Ellen, email me all that, and then right before I'll put it out, okay?
That's a good idea.
So do we start Nehemiah, do we have it ready to go?
Yeah, you should have your book, but it's
So
not.
you want us to do it though, have it?
I
We
think
will
so.
do
That's
our
what we
first
built
lesson.
in.
Yes, first
Okay.
lesson
Do
we
your
will
first
discuss.
lesson.
Have it done?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is everyone else, there was one person I had not given the Nehemiah book to along
got
with
it.
myself. Carolyn, did I give you both?
Yeah. I got
June,
both.
do you have both?
I think I did.
I
but
think
let me
I've got a
double
list
check.
of them. I thought most everybody I had done that to.
Okay, we're gonna try to watch the video.
Oh, cool.
We're gonna see what happens. It's like roulette.
No,
I
I
don't
didn't
know.
know.
Okay, I'll get you one.
Thought it did, but,
Oh, we
yeah, hang on.